A young millionaire, late for an important meeting, saw a beggar with a baby in the rain. Without thinking, he gave her the keys to his house. When he returned, he entered without knocking and was horrified by what he saw. The event hall in the heart of Dallas was filled with prominent figures of society. The sound of clinking glasses and muffled conversations filled the luxuriously decorated space. Robert Marshall, the renowned millionaire architect, walked through the hall with measured steps and impeccable posture. Wearing a tailored suit, his flawless appearance was a facade that concealed the pain he carried within. He wasn't the type to attend social events for pleasure. Since his wife's death, loneliness had been his constant companion. Forced smiles and superficial interactions drained him. But that night was an exception. The charity event had been organized in memory of his wife, and he couldn't miss it. Greeting the attendees mechanically and politely, Robert barely registered the compliments about his career and projects. His mind was elsewhere, preoccupied with concerns about his father's health. Mr. Marshall's frailty was a constant reminder of the passage of time. The weight of his responsibilities kept him on the fringes of high society's frivolities. When he finally managed to escape the crowd, he headed to the parking lot. Rain was pouring down, turning the city streets into makeshift rivers. He got into his car, longing for a moment of peace as he drove to his next business meeting. The drive, however, brought something unexpected. As he made his way down a deserted avenue, something caught his attention. Under the dim glow of a streetlight, a small, hunched figure stood out. It was a young woman holding a baby, both drenched by the rain. She looked fragile, vulnerable, as if the weight of the world rested on her shoulders. Robert slowed down, unable to ignore the scene. His instinct told him to keep driving. This wasn't his problem, but something in his heart, perhaps a remnant of the kindness he thought he had lost, compelled him to stop. He rolled down the car window, letting the cold rain seep inside. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice serious but not harsh. The young woman looked up, revealing large, frightened eyes. Her face was marked with exhaustion, and the baby in her arms let out weak sobs. I'm trying to find a place to stay," she replied, her voice hesitant and strained. Robert observed the scene for what felt like an eternity. She was young, probably not even 20, and the baby looked only a few months old. It was clear they were alone and without resources. "You can't stay out here in the rain." He searched for the right words, aware of how his offer might sound strange. "There's an empty house my family owns. You can use it, at least until the storm passes." The young woman took a step back, instinctively wary. Offers like that didn't come often, especially from a stranger in a luxury car. But the exhaustion in her eyes was undeniable. After a moment of hesitation, she murmured, "Why are you helping me?" The question caught Robert off guard. He didn't have a clear answer. Maybe it was the weight of his own loss, the emptiness he felt that made him sympathize with others who seemed just as broken. Or maybe it was simply the humanity he thought he had lost. "Because I can," he finally replied, handing her the keys to the house. "It's a simple place, but it has what you need to get through the night. I'll ask someone to bring food and clothes." The young woman took the keys with trembling hands. A mix of gratitude and doubt appeared in her eyes. "Thank you," she said, barely audible. Robert just nodded before returning to his car. As he drove away, he couldn't shake the image of the young woman and the baby from his mind. There was something about her that seemed so fragile and yet so resilient, like a flower blooming through cracked asphalt. He headed to his meeting, trying to convince himself it was just a one-time gesture, a simple act to ease his own conscience. But deep down, he knew that encounter, so simple and unexpected, was the prelude to something that would change his life forever. Far away, Lucy entered the house Robert had mentioned. For the first time in months, she felt a flicker of relief. She didn't know who that man was, who had appeared like a bolt of lightning in the middle of a storm, but she had a strange feeling that he wasn't like the others. She looked at her daughter Maria, asleep in her arms, and whispered, maybe things can get better." Outside, the rain continued to fall, as if the sky itself had stories to tell. The morning after the storm brought a clear sky, but Robert's mind was far from at peace. Back to his routine, he struggled to focus on professional commitments, yet his thoughts kept drifting back to the image of the young woman in the rain, holding a baby in her arms. He tried to rationalize his gesture as a one-off act of kindness, but something inside him whispered that the decision carried far greater consequences than he had anticipated. A few days later, while visiting his father's house, Robert noticed that something was out of place. The usually quiet mansion was bustling with activity. The housekeeper approached him, visibly nervous. "Mr. Robert, I need to talk to you," she began. "Your father has made an unexpected decision." "Ooh, what happened?" he asked, already anticipating trouble. The housekeeper took a deep breath before responding. "He decided to move into the house you offered that young woman. He said he needed a quieter place and some company." Robert frowned. The decision was uncharacteristic, even for the eccentric Mr. Marshall. Without wasting time, he drove to the house where Lucy was staying. When he arrived, he was greeted by an unexpected scene. Lucy was in the yard, holding Maria wrapped in an improvised blanket. Her watchful eyes immediately turned to Robert's car, her posture stiff with distrust. Before he could say anything, the front door opened, revealing Mr. Marshall, who was leaning on a cane for support. "Father, what are you doing here?" Robert asked, trying to stay calm. Mr. Marshall gave a faint smile, the kind only he could manage, even in the most improbable situations. "I decided it was time for a change of scenery. And this house has a different energy," he replied, glancing at Lucy and the baby. "I thought I could be of use here." Robert felt a mix of frustration and concern. He was well aware of his father's unpredictable behavior, but involving himself in Lucy's situation was something Robert hadn't expected. He turned to her, meeting her gaze, which was a mix of fear and wariness. "I'm sorry about this. It wasn't my intention to complicate your situation," he said, his voice softer than he had intended. Lucy hesitated before responding. "I didn't know he was coming, but he's been kind." As improbable as the situation seemed, Robert noticed that his father appeared more lively than he had in months. Despite his reservations, he decided to leave things as they were, at least for now. The following days were marked by tense cohabitation. Lucy remained reserved, avoiding unnecessary interactions with Mr. Marshall and especially with Robert. She spoke little, but her actions demonstrated care and attention, particularly toward the elderly man. Mr. Marshall, on the other hand, seemed to enjoy her and the baby's presence, often attempting to break the ice with stories from his youth. Everything changed one afternoon. Robert was in his office, immersed in reports, when he received an urgent call from the housekeeper. "Mr. Robert, it's your father. He's had a stroke." Robert's world seemed to freeze. He dropped everything and rushed to the house. When he arrived, he found paramedics attending to Mr. Marshall, who was conscious but visibly weakened. Beside him stood Lucy, pale but remarkably calm. "She saved his life, Mr. Robert," one of the paramedics said. Her quick actions made all the difference. She performed compressions while calling for emergency services and provided all the right information. Robert was stunned. The young woman who had seemed so fragile in the rain just days before now revealed herself as a figure of strength and courage. He approached Lucy, still processing what he had heard. "Thank you," he said sincerely. "I don't know how to repay you." Lucy, holding Maria in her arms, gave a slight nod but avoided his gaze. "There's no need to thank me. He was here, and I just did what anyone would do." But Robert knew that wasn't true. View would act with the determination and bravery she had shown. What had started as an impulsive act of kindness was now turning into something deeper. He didn't fully understand what that meant, but one thing was clear. Lucy was more than just a young woman seeking shelter. She was someone who deserved far more than he had imagined himself capable of offering. As the paramedics took Mr. Marshall to the hospital, Robert stood in the doorway of the house. Lucy watched him from a distance, the baby asleep in her arms. At that moment, he felt their lives were more intertwined than ever, and that this connection would bring changes he could not yet comprehend. The sun shone brightly over Dallas, illuminating the garden of the house where Robert now spent more and more time. Since his father's stroke, he felt a new sense of responsibility, not just for taking care of Mr. Marshall, but also for understanding the dynamic that had developed with Lucy and little Maria. What had started as an isolated act of kindness was evolving into something far more complex. Lucy, for her part, kept herself busy. Despite her initial shyness, she maintained a diligent routine, caring for the house and the baby. Yet her reserved demeanor intrigued Robert. Behind her careful gestures and watchful gaze was a depth he couldn't ignore. One afternoon, as he was in the garden, Robert noticed Lucy sitting under the shade of a tree, cradling Maria in her arms. He approached slowly, careful not to disturb them. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to the spot beside her. Lucy nodded without looking up. For a moment, the two sat in silence, listening only to the soft sounds of the wind and the baby's gentle murmurs. It was Robert who broke the silence. "You don't talk much about yourself. I understand. It's hard to trust, but..." He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "I want you to know that you don't have to carry everything alone." Lucy lifted her eyes, her lips parting slightly in surprise. The sincerity in Robert's voice disarmed her. She took a deep breath, as if deciding whether to share something so personal. I don't like to talk about the past, but maybe you deserve to know," she began, her voice low, almost hesitant. "I had nowhere to go when you found me. I'd been on the streets for months trying to protect Maria." Robert stayed silent, waiting for her to continue. "I was kicked out of my home by my father when I got pregnant. He was a cruel man, violent. He always was. I never knew my mother." She looked away, pain evident in her expression. "He said I had dishonored the family, that a girl like me didn't deserve a home." "That's horrible, Lucy." Robert spoke firmly, the indignation in his voice clear. "No father should treat his daughter like that." She gave a bitter smile. "I had no choice. I started living on the streets, doing whatever I could to get food for me and Maria. I was lucky to have some people help me, but it was never enough." Her voice trembled, but she quickly regained her composure. "Until you came along." Robert absorbed her words, feeling a mix of empathy and admiration. He had faced loss, but nothing compared to the journey Lucy had endured to survive. Her strength, even in the face of such adversity, deeply impressed him. "I don't know how you managed to endure all that," he said finally. "But you're incredibly strong, Lucy, and Maria is lucky to have a mother like you." Lucy smiled for the first time since she had started telling her story. It was a timid but genuine smile. "I just do what I can. She's everything to me." Robert felt a pang in his chest. Something about Lucy's simple response made him question his own values. He had spent so much time drowning in his own pain, avoiding any emotional ties, that he hadn't realized how much he was isolating himself from what truly mattered. "Have you ever thought about starting over?" he asked suddenly. "About building something new for you and Maria?" Lucy hesitated, looking at him with a mix of curiosity and caution. "Starting over? How?" "Maybe with studies. A job. I could help you find what you need so you won't have to rely on anyone." He paused before continuing. "You deserve more than just surviving, Lucy. You deserve to live." The words hung in the air for a moment, and Robert realized how much he himself needed to hear them. His own life had been marked by the pain of losing his wife and the constant fear of losing his father. But seeing Lucy, he began to understand that there was hope, even in the hardest circumstances. Lucy, with Maria now asleep in her arms, nodded slowly. "I've never thought about it. I've been so focused on keeping Maria alive that I never imagined I could have anything more." Robert smiled. "Maybe it's time to start imagining." From that day on, something shifted between them. Robert began helping Lucy in small ways, bringing her books, encouraging her to think about a future she had once thought impossible. He also started spending more time with Maria, who now smiled every time he appeared. For Robert, every moment spent with Lucy and Maria was a lesson. He began to question his own priorities and how he had dealt with his grief until now. Lucy, in turn, started to open up more, sharing stories from her childhood and dreams she thought had been lost forever. The sun seemed to shine brighter during those days, as if light was slowly seeping into the shadows of their lives. And although neither of them knew what the future held, one thing was clear: they were beginning to find strength in each other. The Dallas afternoon brought a gentle warmth, while Robert's office was busier than usual. Silvana Ortega, a renowned architect and a close friend of Robert, had come to review a major project they were developing. Elegant and confident, Silvana was a striking presence, known not only for her skill as an architect, but also for her determination and charisma. During the meeting, Silvana noticed a subtle change in Robert's demeanor. Always serious and focused on work, he seemed distracted. When the meeting ended, she seized the moment to start a conversation. "Robert, something's different about you," she remarked, offering a sly smile. "You seem more human. What happened?" Robert let out a brief laugh, but his eyes revealed sincerity. "Let's just say some people came into my life and made me see things differently." Intrigued, Silvana raised an eyebrow. "Some people? Sounds interesting." "It's not what you're thinking." Robert chuckled again, this time with a hint of bashfulness. "It's a long story, but if you have some time, you can meet them." Not long after, Silvana accepted Robert's invitation to visit the house where Lucy and Mr. Marshall were staying. Upon arrival, she was struck by the welcoming simplicity of the place, a stark contrast to the grand mansions she was accustomed to visiting. In the garden, Lucy was playing with Maria, who was laughing as she tried to catch the soap bubbles her mother blew into the air. Silvana paused, observing the scene for a moment. Something about it touched her deeply, an inexplicable feeling that tightened her chest. She approached with a warm smile. "You must be Lucy," she said, extending her hand. Lucy glanced at Robert for confirmation before accepting the handshake. "Yes, that's me, and this is Maria," she replied, gesturing to the little girl, who was now trying to hide behind her. Silvana crouched down, smiling at the child. "Hi, Maria. Nice to meet you." The connection between the three was immediate, but for Silvana, there was something more. As they chatted, she felt an inexplicable familiarity with Lucy, as if she had known her before. The young mother was sweet and reserved, but there was something in her eyes Silvana couldn't ignore. Over the following days, Silvana began visiting the house more frequently. She claimed it was to check on how Robert was managing his father's care, but deep down, it was Lucy and Maria's presence that drew her back. One afternoon, while helping Lucy fold some laundry, the two began to open up about their lives. "Do you have a close family?" Silvana asked casually, smoothing out a small piece of baby clothing. Lucy hesitated before answering. "No, I don't have contact with them anymore. My father, He wasn't a good person, and my mother died when I was little. Silvana felt a chill run down her spine. I'm sorry to hear that, she said sincerely. I lost someone important too, my daughter. Lucy looked at her surprised. Your daughter? Silvana nodded, her voice softening. It was many years ago. She was just a few months old. She was kidnapped, and I never found her. Her voice trembled slightly, but she quickly regained control. It's a pain that never goes away. Lucy remained silent, absorbing Silvana's words. Something about her story unsettled Lucy, though she couldn't pinpoint why. That night, Silvana couldn't stop thinking about Lucy. There was something about her story that seemed familiar. Feeling an uncontrollable urge, she began researching old records, news articles about disappearances, and anything that might connect her to Lucy's past. As hours passed, pieces of information began to emerge, forming a disturbing mosaic. One record in particular caught her attention. Lucy's father's name in an old police report tied to abuse and violent behavior. The dates matched the time of her daughter's disappearance. Silvana's heart raced. The next day, she decided to confront Robert. She found him in his office, visibly tense. I need to talk to you about Lucy, she began, without preamble. Robert frowned. What about Lucy? Silvana took a deep breath before revealing what she had discovered. I think she might be my daughter, the one I lost. Robert was stunned. He tried to process her words, but the idea seemed too absurd to be true. Silvana, are you sure about this? Not entirely, but there are clues, and I need to know for certain. I need to investigate further. Silvana decided to approach Lucy gently. They sat in the garden, and Silvana carefully explained her suspicions, afraid of scaring her. Lucy listened in silence, clutching Maria tightly to her chest. The shock in her eyes was evident. You think I'm your daughter? She asked, her voice trembling. I'm not certain, Lucy, but I want to find out. I want to understand if fate brought us here for a reason. The tension in the small garden was palpable. Lucy stared at Silvana, her eyes reflecting a mix of shock, disbelief, and pain. The words Silvana had just spoken still echoed in her mind. I believe you are my daughter, Lucy. Maria, restless in her mother's lap, tugged at Lucy's shirt, trying to get her attention, but Lucy couldn't take her eyes off Silvana. She felt the ground beneath her feet tremble as she tried to process the meaning of those words. That can't be true, she murmured, her voice shaky and almost inaudible. Silvana took a deep breath, trying to steady her emotions. She knew this wouldn't be easy, but she had to be honest. I'm not asking you to believe me now. I just want you to know that everything I've said adds up. Your father's history, the date you were born, even the birthmark on your shoulder. It's the same as my daughter's. Lucy instinctively touched her shoulder, where a small, nearly imperceptible birthmark rested. Her father had always told her it was a mark of bad luck. Now, that mark seemed to be the key to a truth she wasn't sure she was ready to accept. Even if it's true, you weren't there. You didn't save me. The pain in her voice was evident. You say I'm your daughter, but where were you when I needed you? When I was thrown out on the streets? When I begged for food for Maria? Silvana's heart ached. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she kept her composure. She knew Lucy had every right to feel the way she did. I searched for you my entire life, she began, her voice trembling. When you were taken, I was desperate. I called the police, hired detectives, spent everything I had trying to find you. But your father, he was careful in hiding you. He knew how to hurt me in the worst way possible. Lucy lowered her head, Silvana's words weighing heavily on her. Part of her wanted to believe, to accept that this woman was sincere, but another part, wounded and wary, resisted. "This doesn't change what happened," Lucy said firmly. "I spent my life thinking I had no one, that I was alone. And now you show up, saying you're my mother, as if it's easy to just accept." Silvana leaned forward slightly, holding Lucy's hands. "I don't expect it to be easy, Lucy, but I want to prove that I'm here for you, for Maria. I want to make up for the lost time, even if it's too late. Please, give me a chance." Robert arrived shortly after, immediately sensing the tension in the air. He knew something serious had happened, but he wasn't prepared for what Silvana had to say. "She believes Lucy is her daughter?" he asked, surprised. Silvana nodded, while Lucy kept her eyes fixed on the floor, avoiding any eye contact. "And you, Lucy?" Robert asked gently as he approached her. "What do you think about all this?" "I don't know," she replied, shaking her head. "It's all too much for me." Robert sat beside her, trying to ease the weight of the situation. "Look, I can't imagine how you're feeling right now, but what I can say is that you don't have to make a decision right away. Silvana is here, and she really seems to want to be a part of your life. You're not alone in this." Lucy lifted her gaze to him, and for a moment her expression softened. Robert always seemed to know how to calm her, how to bring clarity to the chaos. Silvana, noticing the dynamic between the two, felt a glimmer of hope. She realized that Robert might be the bridge that could help her connect with Lucy. In the days that followed, Silvana began to involve herself more in Lucy and Maria's routine. She brought small gifts, clothes for Maria, children's books, and even flowers for the house. Despite her efforts, Lucy remained cautious, allowing only superficial interactions. Robert, on the other hand, started mediating conversations between the two. One evening during dinner, he suggested something that would change the course of the situation. "What if we did a DNA test?" he proposed, looking at both women. Lucy and Silvana exchanged glances. The silence in the air was heavy. "I don't want to push anything, but maybe this will bring some clarity," Robert continued. "If Silvana is right, you'll have a concrete truth to face. If not, at least we'll know and can move forward." Silvana immediately nodded. "I'm willing to do it. I want to, if you're okay with it, Lucy." Lucy hesitated, but knew this was the only way to put her doubts to rest. After a long moment, she finally nodded. "All right, let's do the test." In the days leading up to the results, the atmosphere oscillated between hope and tension. Silvana did her best to show Lucy that she was committed to being there for her, while Lucy wrestled with the lingering pain that consumed her. Robert, meanwhile, found himself growing increasingly attached to Lucy. He admired her strength, resilience, and above all, the unconditional love she had for Maria. Though he knew his feelings for her were deepening, he chose to keep them to himself, at least for now. He knew Lucy needed support, not added complications. Finally, the day of the results arrived, bringing the answer they had all been waiting for. When Silvana opened the envelope, her hands trembling, tears streamed down her face. "It's true, Lucy," she said, looking at her with tear-filled eyes. "You are my daughter." Lucy felt the air leave her lungs. The confirmation brought a wave of emotions: anger, sadness, hope. She looked at Maria, who was innocently playing on the floor, and then finally back at Silvana. "I don't know if I can forgive you right now, but maybe we can try." Silvana nodded, tears falling freely. Robert, observing the scene, felt a deep admiration for Lucy. Despite all the pain she carried, she was still capable of giving love and connection a chance. The morning in Dallas dawned with a refreshing breeze, a sign of the changes ahead. For Lucy, the past few months had been an emotional roller coaster. The confirmation that Silvana was her biological mother still echoed in her mind, but at the same time, something inside her was beginning to shift. The walls she had built to protect herself were slowly crumbling. Maria ran around the garden, playing with the flowers Silvana had brought during her last visit. The little girl seemed increasingly comfortable around Silvana, affectionately calling her Grandma. For Lucy, the scene was both strange and comforting. One quiet afternoon, Robert called Lucy for a conversation in the small office he had improvised in the house. "I've been thinking about something, Lucy," he began, leaning against the desk and looking at her with seriousness, but also kindness. "Have you ever thought about going back to school?" Lucy blinked, surprised by the question. "School? It's been so long." "I don't know if it's possible," she said, lowering her gaze, her insecurity evident. "Of course it's possible," Robert replied with a slight smile. "You're smart, determined, and honestly, you have an eye for detail that makes me think you'd be a fantastic architect." Lucy laughed nervously, as if the idea were absurd. But the genuine sparkle in Robert's eyes and his words awakened something within her. For years, she had buried her dreams, believing there was no place for them in her life of survival. Now, someone was telling her it might be possible. "I don't know. Architecture has always been something I admired, but I never thought it could be real for me." Robert stepped closer, placing a reassuring hand over hers. "Maybe it's time to start thinking about it. Silvana and I are here to help. You don't have to do it alone." Lucy felt her heart warm at his words. For the first time, she glimpsed a different future, one where she wasn't just surviving, but building something for herself and Maria. Silvana was thrilled when she learned about Lucy's desire to resume her studies. She immediately offered to help, not just financially, but emotionally as well. The two spent afternoons together, with Silvana teaching Lucy the basics of architecture and sharing stories of her own projects. "I see so much of myself in you," Silvana said as they sat at the kitchen table, with Maria scribbling on papers beside them. "You have a natural vision for creating. Don't doubt that." Lucy began to feel more confident, especially with Silvana by her side. The woman who had once been a distant figure was now becoming a pillar of support, a mother Lucy had never imagined she could have. Meanwhile, Robert was also thinking of ways to help Lucy achieve her independence. He knew she still felt uncomfortable, relying financially on him and Silvana. So during a conversation with his father, he proposed a solution. "Dad, what do you think about Lucy taking care of you while she continues her studies?" he asked, as Mr. Marshall settled into his armchair. The elderly man smiled, amused. "I like the idea. She's good company, and Maria is a little bundle of energy that reminds me how wonderful it is to have a lively house." Robert smiled, pleased with the response. When he proposed the idea to Lucy, she hesitated at first. "Robert, I don't know if I'm qualified for this. I don't want it to seem like I'm taking advantage." "You're not taking advantage of anything," he replied. "My father likes you and Maria, and this way you can work while studying without worrying too much about expenses." After some thought, Lucy agreed. Taking care of Mr. Marshall became a role she fulfilled with dedication and affection. Over time, she developed a special bond with him, and he frequently encouraged her to believe in herself. "You have something rare, Lucy," Mr. Marshall said one day while playing with Maria in the garden, "a strength that can transform your life and others. Don't lose sight of that." As months passed, Lucy's life began to transform. She enrolled in a preparatory course and, with Silvana's help, started studying to enter architecture school. Her days were filled with books, exercises, and caring for Maria and Mr. Marshall. Despite her intense routine, she felt more fulfilled than ever. Her relationship with Silvana also flourished. Slowly, Lucy allowed her mother to get closer, seeing her not just as a figure from the past, but as someone who genuinely wanted to be part of her and Maria's lives. The pain hadn't completely disappeared, but Silvana's love and dedication were helping heal the wounds, And Robert, he remained by Lucy's side, quietly supporting her every step. Though he hadn't expressed his feelings for her, it was clear that his affection grew daily. He admired her deeply and knew the right moment to speak would come. One evening, after a long day, Lucy sat on the porch, gazing at the starry sky. Robert appeared, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "I thought you might need this," he said, handing her one. "Thank you," Lucy replied, smiling softly. They sat in silence for a few moments, simply enjoying the calm of the night. Finally, Lucy spoke. "You know, I never imagined my life could be like this. With so many people who genuinely care about me and Maria." Robert looked at her, his heart beating faster. "You deserve this, Lucy. You deserve all of it and more." She looked at him, surprised by the intensity in his voice. Despite her exhaustion, she felt more hopeful than ever. For the first time, her life didn't feel like a burden to bear, but a path full of possibilities. And in that moment, under the starry sky, Lucy felt that the bonds she was forming with Robert, Silvana, and Mr. Marshall weren't temporary. They were the foundations of a new life she was beginning to build. The house was filled with laughter and familiar voices. The garden, carefully tended by Lucy and Mr. Marshall, glowed in the colors of the setting sun. Maria ran among the plants, with Silvana chasing after her, both laughing as if they were the only ones in the world. Robert watched the scene from the porch, his heart heavy with what he knew he needed to say. It was a sweet weight, a rare nervousness. Lucy stepped out through the door, carrying a tray of juice and fruit. Her face was lit by a serene smile, something Robert had noticed had become more frequent in recent months. She seemed different, more confident, more alive. Her journey from a vulnerable young woman holding a baby in the rain to a determined woman on the brink of graduating was something he couldn't get out of his mind. "Is everything okay?" she asked, placing the tray on the table. "You look thoughtful." Robert smiled softly. "I'm fine, just admiring how much things have changed since that day." Lucy followed his gaze, watching Maria laugh in Silvana's arms and Mr. Marshall observing them with eyes bright with pride. "They've changed a lot, haven't they?" she replied, her voice full of gratitude. But Robert knew there was still something he needed to say. Later that night, after Maria had fallen asleep and Silvana had left, Robert called Lucy for a conversation. They were on the porch, the starry sky once again, a witness to an important moment. "Lucy, there's something I've been keeping to myself for a while, but I think now is the right time to say it." She looked at him with curiosity but also a hint of worry. "What is it?" He took a deep breath, trying to gather his thoughts. "Since the day I saw you in the rain with Maria, something changed in me. I was so lost, so closed off from the world. But you showed me a strength I didn't even know existed. Every day with you has made me realize that I don't just want to help you or be near you. I want to be with you." He paused, looking deeply into her eyes. "I love you, Lucy. And I want to be part of your life, part of Maria's life. I want us to build something together. I want to be a family." Lucy was silent, his words echoing in her mind. Tears welled in her eyes, but this time they weren't of sadness. They were of emotion, surprise, and a joy she didn't know she could feel. "Robert, She hesitated, laughing nervously. "I don't even know what to say." "You don't have to say anything now," he said, holding her hands. "I just want you to know how I feel. It doesn't matter what people think or say. I'm here for you always." Lucy smiled, tears streaming down her face. After everything she had been through, his words were a balm to her soul. She squeezed his hands, feeling safe, loved. "I love you too, Robert, and I want nothing more than this, for us to be a family." The months that followed brought challenges. Robert's social circle, accustomed to glamour and appearances, didn't easily accept his decision to be with Lucy. Malicious comments and disapproving glances were inevitable, but Robert stood firm, shielding Lucy from negativity. His determination only strengthened their bond. Silvana remained a constant presence, supporting Lucy every step of the way. She accompanied her to classes and helped with Maria, fully embracing her role as mother and grandmother. Mr. Marshall, now healthier, often reminded everyone that a house filled with love was far more important than any social approval. Finally, the big day arrived, Lucy's graduation. The ceremony was simple but deeply meaningful. When Lucy stepped onto the stage to deliver her speech, the room fell silent. She scanned the audience, finding the faces of Robert, Silvana, Maria, and Mr. Marshall. They smiled at her, and at that moment she knew exactly what to say. When I started this journey, I had no idea where it would lead. All I knew was that I wanted to give my daughter Maria a better life. But along the way, I discovered that this better life wasn't just about work or studies. It was about love, support, and family. She paused, taking a deep breath. I want to thank my new family, to Mr. Marshall, who has taught me so much with his wisdom and kindness. To Silvana, who gave me the motherly love I always wanted, even after so many years apart. And to Robert. Her voice wavered, but she continued, looking directly at him. For believing in me, even when I doubted myself. For being the rock that supported every step I took, and for giving me something I thought I'd never have, a home. The room erupted in applause. Robert, his eyes filled with tears, knew that moment was the beginning of something even greater. That night, everyone gathered at the house to celebrate. Maria, now full of energy and confidence, ran among the guests, proudly showing off her new dress. Lucy watched everything with a serene smile. Robert approached her, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "You did it," he whispered. She smiled, turning to look at him. "We did it." Under the soft garden lights and the brilliance of the stars, the family was finally complete. For the first time in her life, Lucy felt she was no longer alone. The home she had always searched for wasn't made of walls or a roof, but of the people around her, the laughter, and the love that filled every corner. And in that moment, she knew that no matter what the future held, together they could overcome anything. After all, the love that bound them was the strongest foundation they could build. I hope you enjoyed today's story. If you did, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below what you thought about the story. See you in the next video.